starting off with brownish green and applying it with a sponge. This was something I painted while my food is in the oven, so I did rush through a lot of steps. Fun fact, I got most of this model for free from the Poxwalker kit. That's why he doesn't have a full arm. Adding some white and applying it to the exact same mixture until I get this nice looking vomit color, which would be a mid color for us. I'm trying to be quite thorough with this step, trying to apply it to as many areas as possible, while also applying slightly less pressure that the previous green is still visible. At the same time, I do know the Streaking Grime will work best if the color is bright, so I do my best to not ignore any areas. The color would also dull down once it dries, so it'll be a little bit less bright. Here I mix even more white and mix it into the exact same mixture as before. This will be the final highlight. I'm using AK white, which is relatively transparent, so even though I'm mixing it, when it dries, it has a very smooth transition between them. And I use very little pressure so that the highlights are there but not prominent. And my idea was to essentially just go over the top, provide some extra highlights for when the Streaking Grime is going to be. For the Tentacle, I decided to go with Warlord purple, but this is where things went a little bit south as I began trying to highlight with a bunch of different colors until realizing that the Warlord purple just worked far too good, so I grabbed it again, went over the entire area, and added just a little bit of white for the highlight. For the metallic, I went with a very bright bronze color. This is technically AK burnt tin, but I also mixed some green stuff world bronze into it, which is a dry pigment. However, any other bronze will work. You just got to make sure that the color is bright so that once you apply the Streaking Grime, it's still visible and has that really nice effect. If you've never used Streaking Grime before, it is slightly toxic, so I personally use gloves for this method. I normally don't, but since I was preparing food, I did not want any of that toxic stuff on my hands when I was going to be eating. I dipped my brush into the Streaking Grime exactly once and just began spreading this all over the model. The bottle is right there next to me. It's closed because it does release harmful fumes, so the moment you're done with it, just close it right away. The glove is also there for once I actually start cleaning off the Streaking Grime, not applying it with a brush. Speaking of which, I grab a sponge and begin working on it. I usually wait until I can see that the Streaking Grime is dry and no longer wet, but it's still technically active, so this sponge doesn't have anything on it, and I'm just simply lightly pulling off all the Streaking Grime. I also quickly start realizing that I'm cleaning off a little bit too much for the effect I actually wanted. But I decided to continue cleaning off just so I don't have any excess, and once I reapply some of the Streaking Grime, it'll look even throughout all the parts. Then I pick up the exact same brush I used previously. I don't add any Streaking Grime on it. It's just the Streaking Grime I had from previous and just reapply it onto the model. I decided to go for these rapid movements of just like semicircles to try to generate some texture for the Streaking Grime. Then once again, I just waited a little bit for it to slightly dry, and this time I'm using the dirty part of the sponge to essentially smudge the Streaking Grime around the model, rather than trying to clean it off. Since all of our colors are so bright, there's no reason to actually remove all the Streaking Grime, as the model will just look a bit bizarre. Then I grab some AK Florescent Green. It's literally a fluorescent paint. If you have a UV light, this model will start glowing. But as a result, this color is very vibrant, and it has this really cool toxic effect that just makes me think of the Pox. Since this model is extremely dull looking and, well, I mean, let's be honest, it's very simple, I knew that this step will just add a lot more detail visually. I got some AK Deep Red and applied it onto the lens. I did forget to record a secondary step where I'll go back into our highlight and mix it in to give a highlight to the lens. But wait, there's literally more. Since I had to go back and re-record the palette since I wasn't thinking about this when I was making this, I did actually use all the colors to paint an additional Poxwalker, so let's get to that. Here I use red, purple, and our previous highlight to essentially, and a little bit of black, to generate literally Bugsman glow. I was testing this new gray primer on this Poxwalker, so I decided to use that. Literally just slapping paint onto this guy and seeing where it went. I think in total, this Poxwalker was painted in about 10 minutes, maybe less, and that includes the Streaking Grime. I'm also applying some of the previous puke green color we have, just to give this guy a bit more of a sickly look. Then I add a little bit of white to our own custom-made Bugsman glow and apply it over the flesh again, generating some highlight areas. For the pants, I just took some Warlord purple, mixed some black into it, and applied it as a more or less a wash to the pants. Then I just did the exact same step as previously, using our Streaking Grime and cleaning it off. This time I used AK Odorless Thinner, as the model was already not bright enough on its own, so I wanted to remove a lot more Streaking Grime. Then using that fluorescent paint to generate some pox that's just leaking out of our Poxwalker. Painting some eyes and he was done. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed any of this, I have all these other videos right here that should have some other alternative ways of painting some stuff relatively quick.